This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
It is a night where multiple screens are required. We, of course, have the NFL draft, which I love and will always adore, but also 4 different playoff games across the NBA and the NHL for today. We are here to break down all 4 of those games with Tom Vecchio getting his read, his favorite bets across them at FanDuel Sportsbook, and then I'll swing back, talk some NASCAR and Formula One towards the end of the show. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, joined here as mentioned by Tom Vecchio. You can find him on Twitter at DFS_Tom. You can find his work over at numberFire.com. Tom, my goodness, what a fun night of sports we got going here for today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yes, certainly a very exciting time. As you mentioned, the draft is happening tonight. I will certainly have that up. It's probably going to be muted. You can get the picks on Twitter before they actually happen on TV. So I'll certainly be following that. But of course, we have 3 very important playoff games tonight. I am ready to go, not to mention some MLB.
I am not surprised that the draft could not unseat the Rangers. I think
right.
We all could have predicted that one. Minus 15,000 would have been the Rangers to the primary screen. How many screens will you have firing for tonight?
It's going to be 3 plus my phone.
Okay, that counts, right? But that's a 4th one, right?
I mean, I'm not watching anything on my phone. It's just I'll be placing the bets on my phone.
Okay,
and then watch.
How do we count So MLB TV, you can watch in a quad box. Does that count for 4 screens or is that 1 screen?
It's still 1 screen. It's the actual quantity of screens, not what you're watching. Because I could split screen every screen in that. I could bring up 2 hockey games and just put them on, half and half.
I've done that. You have the half side, and then I'm using my hands, which you can't. It's not useful for people not watching YouTube. Yeah. But you have the half screen with the quad box, and then the other half you have 1 game on top, 1 game on bottom. That's 6 games. The quad box is kind of clunky. They're mobile. They're smaller version site is not great for MLB TV, so you can't really minimize that to a half screen as well. But or a quarter screen, I guess I should say. But I can get 6.
The question is, do you have sound on for multiple of them at the same time?
No, I would go nuts. I have sound on 0 usually, to be fully honest. But that might be.
I can do 2 sound at the same time. That's it.
It depends. It depends on how invested I am. If it's an NBA playoff game, and I've actually had more interest in the NBA this year because we've been talking about it so much, I will have the sound on for that. Otherwise, I'm if there's no NBA and I'm just watching baseball, I may or may not be playing my Formula One video game as well. And I have to have headphones in to know when the strategist is talking to me, hey, it's about to rain, buddy. And I'm like, oh gosh, I guess we got to bring K-Mag in the pits, got to stay on top of everything. So just maybe this is just further evidence of my inability to focus on anything at one time. We're going to dive in and talk about those NBA and NHL games. And again, we'll talk some Formula One and NASCAR towards the end of the show in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread, wherever you get your podcast. If you want some NFL draft thoughts for tonight, we talked about that with Dr. Ed Feng back on Tuesday. Check out his favorite bets there over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and over on the FanDuel YouTube page. You can check out all these shows on the FanDuel YouTube page. Subscribe there, hit the like button, the thumbs up button if you like what you see, or if you're listening on the podcast feed, leave us a 5-star rating over on Apple Podcasts. Let's start things off with the 1 NBA game for tonight, Tom. That is the Celtics and the Hawks right now. The Celtics 7-point favorites. Total here is 232. It kind of looked like the Celtics might ice things off earlier on, but Hawks were able to win in game 5. Now they're 7-point dogs here in game number 6. How do you see things playing out, and which props are you targeting here for the Celtics and the Hawks?
Yeah, certainly a very interesting series considering the Hawks were able to win when they did not have DeJounte Murray the other night. He was suspended for 1 game. This is, I would say, a bit more interesting of a series than I initially anticipated. We saw the Celtics, obviously looking very strong during the regular season, and the Hawks, their playing team. Everyone has their preconceived notions. It's okay, the Celtics should be winning this 4-1, maybe even 4-0, and that really hasn't been the case. When it comes to tonight, I see this as a kind of no-nonsense game from the Celtics. We've seen some pretty strong quotes from Tatum and Brown over the past, week or so, where they have to come out with energy every game. They were referencing games last year that were closeout games that they were not giving full effort, or they thought they could, have a good game and not bring it 100%. So that's the kind of overall mindset I'm bringing into that. And that means a lot of unders. And that starts with game under 232. I'm not seeing a whole lot of points scored in this one, despite what we've seen from the first few games of the series. We have seen, I would say, much more scoring than I initially anticipated. So starting off under 232 for the game. And then my favorite player prop is going to be Jaylen Brown under 2.5 made threes. That's sitting at -115. He's been over this mark in the last 2 games, but like I said, this is much more scoring than I anticipated. In the first few games of the series, he was at 2, 2, and 0. So he's barely hitting the over on this. I'm not really worried about the past 2 games. And if I'm expecting the under to hit overall, I'm not going to be taking the over on 3-pointers, the overs on points, whatever it might be.
Right. Let's see if we can actually same game parlay this puppy here. As always, not my preferred route for playing things, but let's see if we can do it. And yeah, we can. Okay, so that's plus 227. You want to pair those together. Obviously, they know that those 2 bets are correlated, which is why it's just plus 227. But Jaylen Brown under 2.5 is -115. The under 232 is -110. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. So it sounds like your just overall vibe here is expecting more of a low scoring game as a result of the Celtics playing pretty high energy for tonight.
Right. And I think that also correlates with Jason Tatum over 9.5 rebounds, -128. The Celtics are a good defensive team. It's just a fact. A couple games where the Hawks are putting up a lot of points, I'm not really worried about overall. Tatum has been over this mark in, 10, 11, 12 rebounds in some of the games this series. More rebounds mean more missed shots, which means less scoring. So an over on rebounds correlates with under total points. So that's where I'm going. It is juiced a little bit at -128, as you can see. I think that's the expectation. Again, some of these, I don't want to take like some of these quotes like too heavily, but they have a good amount of experience. Like they lost in the finals last year. They know what it takes to win. They know that they don't want to go to a potential game 7. Like this is the time to kind of show what the Celtics are capable on defense. And that means a lot of just kind of traditional playoff basketball.
Yeah. Okay. So the bets Tom likes here for the NBA for tonight: Celtics Hawks under 232, Jaylen Brown under 2.5 made threes at -115, and Jason Tatum over 9.5 rebounds at -128. The more robust slate for tonight, Tom, is in the NHL. 3 games there, beginning with the Lightning and the Maple Leafs. Right now, the Maple Leafs money line -156. The Lightning are at +130. Total here is 6.5. What do you see in this game for the first game of the night?
Well, this is by far the most interesting game on the slate. The Maple Leafs haven't made it out of the first round in whatever it is, the past 17 years. They've lost to Lightning in, last year in 7 games. And this is like the biggest hump that they have to get over is winning the first round. And betting against the Lightning is obviously a very tough thing to do given their success in their recent history. Betting in favor of the Maple Leafs, given their lack of success in literally almost 2 decades, is also a very tough thing to do. But, where would I be going for this? And that's probably going to be siding with the Lightning, and that's straight to a player prop and straight to their best player, Nikita Kucherov, over 3.5 shots at +118. And this comes down to the fact that the Lightning are in an elimination game. It's very clear. And, when I get to these certain circumstances about like what needs to happen if the Lightning were to win this game, and like what happens if they don't lose this game, or obviously they're eliminated, but like what causes them to be eliminated and how does that happen? Well, in my mind, I'm saying if Kucherov does not have over 3.5 shots, the Lightning aren't doing something right to put themselves in a spot to win because they're facing elimination. So if they want to stay alive, they have to rely on their best players, and that's probably going to be Kucherov taking a lot of shots. So in my mind, I guess I'd be leaning with the Lightning in this under my theory that Kucherov has to be taking shots because they're about to be eliminated. And if so, what does that mean? Like they have to rely on these best players. So I guess I would lean with the Lightning. I'm not going to bet on them, but you get this whole sense that I'm going with. Like
you're betting on the urgency without having it dictated by the results. I think that's
correct. That's a great way to put it. Yes.
Yeah. Because the shot one is more process oriented versus the +130 money line is results oriented. And,
exactly.
I'm never going to be opposed to that. Kucherov over 3.5 is plus 118. The money line again at plus 130. But it sounds like you think that the Lightning are able to get a win here. Again, not betting on it, but it sounds like that's your sentiment on this game and keep this one going.
Right. Like, and you could just use the same example for, NBA. Like if, you were targeting LeBron's points prop. Like if LeBron doesn't hit the over or, he's not taking enough field goal attempts in an elimination game, like the Lakers aren't doing something right or something went horribly wrong. So it's the same thought process where I want to be sticking with what we know should be happening given the circumstances of this game environment, which is an elimination.
And what should be happening is a lot of volume for Nikita Kucherov. So plus 118 over 3.5 is where Tom is going there. Right. Second game on the slate is the Rangers at the Devils. Again, of much interest to you, Tom. The series tied up at 2-2 right now. Devils minus 120 on the money line. The Rangers even money. Total is 5.5. Under is minus 120. Over is minus 102. Pretty even series so far, Tom. What are you seeing here for game number 5?
That is immediately going with the under. 5.5 minus 120. The first few games certainly had a lot of goals. 5-1 for the Rangers in those games, but we have to take into account certain things. Game 1. The Devils scored the one goal via Jack Hughes on a penalty shot, right? And so that's obviously very fluky. That's something that rarely happens in a normal regular season game. And the Rangers also got an empty net game. So an empty net goal in that game to end it. So we're really looking at a game that didn't have 6 real goals. It kind of had 4. And then in the 2 most recent games, they were dead unders the whole time. So you see the series and you say, okay, half the games have gone over, half the games have under, but we have to take into context how the goals were scored in some of those first 2 games. And when you see empty net goals, you see these penalty shots, like that's not a real indication of scoring. So really like 3.5 of the games have gone under, at least in my mind. So that's the way I'm looking at it. That means siding with the under yet again, because great games from the Rangers to start, horrible games from the Rangers in the next 2, and obviously the reverse from the Devils. They played terrible in the first 2 games and awesome in the most recent games. And they also have a very interesting dynamic where they're starting this essentially third string goalie for the Devils, and he's been lights out. And the Rangers just don't have him figured out. And that just means a lack of scoring on both sides. They're going to be playing it super tight. Give me the under 10 times out of 10.
With a series where there's multiple games facing the same guy, do you tend to see teams figure it out against a more of an unknown type of goalie, or is that not something you can do in such a short time frame?
I mean, there's probably half examples of yes and half examples of no, where pulling or I would say starting what is essentially an AHL goalie and him completely shutting a team down is not necessarily uncommon, especially when it comes to the regular season. Because the teams just don't ratchet up the energy because it's an AHL goalie. You can just kind of go about things the normal way and they'll get some pucks in net. Well, it's playoff intensity and the players in front of them are playing at such a high level that they're not getting clean shots. So when the shots do get on net, they're not the best quality. So I don't really take that into account too much.
Sure. Because
if he's playing at the NHL level, he's probably good enough to come away with wins, which he's clearly doing right now. And this is Akira Schmid, who I'm referring to, the third string goalie that the Devils have been starting over the past 2 games.
All right. So we're banking on him keeping it up. Under 5.5 is minus 120 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Anything else you like in that game, Tom?
I don't want to be biased, but the Mika Zibanejad goal prop is at plus 200. And I think that number is just too big considering, he had 39 goals this season. He was one of their primary goal scorers, one of the best goal scorers in the league. Some quotes from him coming out saying that he feels the pressure to score because he's not scored in this series yet. And throughout the regular season, his goal prop is at, plus 110, plus 120, plus 125, and it's at plus 200 now. So I just think objectively, the number is too big. Even though I love the under in this game, I think the goal prop is still very good. He's on the first forward line. He plays on the first power play, and he normally plays, what I just dubbed the Alex Ovechkin role in the power play, where he sits on that circle ready for the one-timer, being a primary shooter. So despite all these things leaning towards the under, the goal number is just too big at plus 200.
And it sounds like that's more of a lean for you versus the under is a firm thing you feel good about, correct?
Correct. 100%. Okay. I'm fully on board with the under. My slight personal bias in favor of the Rangers, I guess you could say, is pushing me towards Zibanejad at plus 200.
Okay, but we're liking the under here at minus 120, under 5.5 for the Rangers and Devils. Final game for tonight, the Vegas Knights have a chance to close out the Winnipeg Jets. The money line for Vegas is minus 184. The money line for Winnipeg, plus 152. Total here is also 5.5 with plus 100 even money on the under. Vegas dropped game one, but they've won 3 straight since. What do you see happening here in this potential closeout game?
I do think the Knights advance tonight. That's my overall take. The Jets, they came out strong in game one. They lost in double overtime in game 3. This is a very tough spot for the Jets. Number one of their best offensive players, Nikolai Ehlers, has been out the whole series. He has yet to play. He's technically listed as a game-time decision tonight, but he's been a game-time decision, in these games. He hasn't played since April 11th. Number 2, their second-line center, Mark Scheifele, has been ruled out of this game. They said it's a chance that he could play in Game 6, but he is out for tonight. The bottom 6 of their lineup for the Jets, does not look good. Mm-hmm. This is not a group of players that really should be seeing heavy minutes, and now we're missing 2 of their players. They've already been missing one with Ehlers out. Now they're missing Scheifele. So I love the under in this game, but more importantly, my favorite bet of this would be the Winnipeg Jets team total under 2.5 at minus 122. Their total goals under 2.5. Game 1, they came out strong. Yes, they did. They scored 5 goals. But realistically, the defense from the Golden Knights has been stellar. Yes, they scored 4 goals in this game that went to double overtime. It's a fluky game. Those things happen. But because they're missing these offensive players, if we look at the other 2 games, I think those are more clear indications of what we should be seeing from this outcome. I'm not seeing them scoring 4 or 5 goals when they're missing 2 of their top 6 forwards. And we have players that were playing on the 3rd and 4th line are now playing primary offensive roles when the Golden Knights are fully healthy at home. So I had a lot of faith in the Jets. I think Connor Hellebuyck is awesome in that. He can legitimately steal a win for them. But they just don't have a lot of help up front.
So the Jets under 2.5 goals, minus 122 at FanDuel Sportsbook. You said you think that Vegas advances. Is it enough for you to bet the minus 184 money line, or does the Hellebuyck stuff, right way to phrase it, I'm sure, push you away from that and more toward the Jets under goals?
Yeah, I don't love the minus 188. I would just stick with the team total because that should indicate that the Golden Knights are doing what they need to do, which is playing solid defense, having solid goaltending, coming away with wins. Hellebuyck is not a player I would go against at plus 188. Goalie, I should say. I wouldn't go against that at minus 188.
And the goal prop for the Jets doesn't require you to do so. So correct. You can kind of navigate around that, take your lean on the game, and just apply it that way instead. All right. That is Tom Vecchio. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Tom, have a blast. Not just tonight, but also this entire weekend, watching hockey, watching baseball, watching NBA. We appreciate it as always. Good luck to you. And we'll talk to you once again, I'm sure, next week.
Yeah, thanks. I wouldn't say necessarily have a blast when the Rangers are playing because it's obviously very stressful. But I appreciate the sentiment. It's playoff hockey. That
implies things are going well. So
I would hope they go well, but playoff hockey is I want to, scream and cry and throw up all at the same time.
If you could do that, video it. You could get some TikTok views out of that, I'm sure. So, if you're going to do it, at least get it on video.
All right.
That's my advice for you. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. As always, check out Tom on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Find his work over at numberFire and maybe on TikTok too. Eventually we can get the vomiting, crying, all that all at once at the exact same time. We're going to dig in and talk some NASCAR in Dover and talk some Formula One and Azerbaijan all here in just 1 second. But first, with the NBA playoffs here, you can turn crossovers into cash on FanDuel. Right now, all customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend when you bet the NBA playoffs. That's right. Just place a 3+ leg same-game parlay or same-game parlay plus on any NBA playoff game. You'll get bonus bets back if you don't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Head to the FanDuel app and get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend of the NBA playoffs. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. And Massachusetts Hope is here. Gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777. or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. We do have racing back on the menu for this week. We got Formula One in Azerbaijan and Baku. We also have NASCAR in Dover. Rain hopefully going to clear the way there. We can be okay to get those races in. But I want to start things off with Formula One. They've had a pretty long layoff here, which has allowed us to kind of forget how things may have gone early on this year. But looking specifically at Azerbaijan, it's the same thing that I saw in Australia, where there is one driver who I think is undervalued pretty much across the board. And that driver to me is Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is plus 650 to podium. He is minus 160 to finish top 6 and minus 300 to finish inside the top 10. I have value on Stroll in all three of those markets. Stroll, it's been pretty clear that he's not Fernando Alonso, but it's also clear that Aston Martin, I think, has the second best car. Now, you could question that based on what we saw in Australia, where George Russell was fast before his issues. Lewis Hamilton ran second behind Max Verstappen that day. So Mercedes did make gains, but we also saw Aston Martin be pretty much right there. Alonso was trying to run down Hamilton the entire latter part of the race. Never quite got there, but he was pretty fast throughout that. So Stroll, we see that the speed for Aston Martin reflected in Alonso's odds, but not very much in Stroll's, because he's actually behind all of the Mercedes and Ferrari drivers in all three of these markets. And I don't think he should be based on how fast Aston Martin has been. If we look at the three races so far, Stroll's had really good speed numbers in all three. I don't think he was actually a threat for the podium in Australia, despite finishing fourth there. That was more so kind of a fluke based on chaos at the end, but he was going to finish sixth most likely, even if not for that. So the top 6 market would have cashed. I would take the same approach to Stroll that we took for Australia, where you put the majority of your bets, your allocation on Stroll in the top 10 and top 6 markets, because those are more stable, do show a good amount of value there. And then you put a sprinkle on the podium to give yourself upside. Should Stroll outrun Alonso, should any of the Red Bulls have troubles, I think he'd be in contention for a podium if that were to happen. So to me, Lance Stroll, the most undervalued driver for Formula One in Azerbaijan. I think that, again, the podium at plus 650 appealing, but primary focus here is the T6 at minus 160 and the top 10 at minus 300. The other spot where I show a bit of value, I probably will not be taking this yet. That's Pierre Gasly, top 6 at plus 410. Gasly, 22.8% for me to finish inside the top 10 or inside the top 6 versus 19.6% implied. He's really struggled in qualifying both last year and this year, which means I'm kind of okay taking more of a wait and see approach. Maybe we can get value on Gasly later on in the weekend. If that winds up being the case, I could fire later, maybe get a better number if he doesn't qualify well again. But I didn't consider it. So it's available if you're interested. You want to add one more on, want a bit of longer odds. Gasly plus 410 to finish inside the top 6. I think that does make sense. But to me, the primary bet for me for Azerbaijan will be riding with Lance Stroll in several different markets. The NASCAR Cup Series is in Dover this weekend, as mentioned. And we've had a couple weeks where I haven't had a lot of value in outrights outside of Talladega, which is kind of all I had was outrights. But for this week, there is some value in the top 10 market, which we'll discuss here. But I actually do like a couple of outright bets. And one of them is in Kyle Larson. He's 5-1 at FanDuel. He has shortened there. He was 6-1. He has shortened to 5-1, in part because Alex Bowman had to withdraw due to an injury, open up some win equity. Sounds like people were on Larson as a result of that. I would shop around, see if you can get 6-1 or plus 550 somewhere else. But even at 5-1, I'm still showing value in Larson. Now, the caveat here is if qualifying gets rained out Saturday, and it seems like there's pretty decent odds that does happen, Larson would start 19th. That would not impact my model very much, but it may lengthen his win odds. So you could potentially get a better number. I think what you do is kind of have like a risk tolerance discussion with yourself and decide, okay, do I want to wait on Larson and get a better number, or should I lock in what's, at least by my numbers, is good value right now? I honestly have Larson's win odds above 20%, which is rare. It's hard to get there with my model, but there are a couple reasons why Larson is that high for me. The first one is his current form is sick. He won Martinsville, didn't have, I don't think, the best car there, but he won that race. He did have the best car in Phoenix. Maybe Kevin Harvick was a bit better than him, but he could have won Phoenix, could have won Richmond. The form for Larson is elite right now. And you combine that with a guy who runs well at Dover even before he was with Hendrick. He won here at Chip Ganassi Racing back in 2019. In the 2 races here with Hendrick, he had a first place average running position in one of them. In the second one, he had a crash, and I think he got a lap down, but still rallied for a top 10 finish. So you could hold off and see if you can get a better number. I think there is a decent chance of that, but there was qualifying rained out for some other race, and we didn't see FanDuel move odds very much based on that. So I don't know what the odds are of that. I don't think he'll get shorter than 5-1, so you can probably play some wait and see here, but I do think that Larson at 5-1 is a bet I'd want to get, whether it's now or later on this weekend. Again, waiting to see on the rain. I think at some point you should add Larson. 5-1, still a good number based on my numbers. The other outright I like is Kevin Harvick at 11-1. Harvick would start right outside the top 10 if qualifying does get rained out. I have him at 10% to win, which ranks second behind just Kyle Larson. The implied odds for Harvick are 8.3%. Harvick, similar to Larson, has elite current form right now, where, as mentioned, if Larson shouldn't have been the guy who won in Phoenix, it would have been Harvick. I think both those guys are better than William Byron there. He had great runs Richmond, good car in Martinsville before some issues late, and Harvick has remained pretty good at Dover, even with his form slipping a bit. He had a decent run here last year, rough year overall for Harvick, but he was good in there. So I am showing value in Harvick top 10 at minus 160. I know it's a big number to lay for a top 10, but value is value. I do have value on Harvick there, but I also do think that 11-1 to win this race is a good number. So Kevin Harvick, minus 160 top 10, and 11-1 to win both those fine bets by my numbers. Other than the Harvick top 10, the other one I like is Brad Keselowski. He is plus 140 to finish inside the top 10, and I've got value on that as well. The implied odds at plus 140 are 42%. I have Keselowski at 45%. And similar to Harvick and Larson, we've seen Keselowski have good form on the shorter track so far this year. He wasn't great at Dover last year, and that could be a demerit. It's one race there with RFK Racing, but his teammate, Chris Buescher, won the pole for that race and ran decently well during the race as well. And then Buescher went out and won Bristol. So the concrete performance for RFK so far has been good. Keselowski had an 8th place average running position in Bristol as well. So I think this team in general is trending up on these shorter tracks. Keselowski figuring out this new car. If qualifying were to be rained out, Keselowski would start on the second row. So I'm not going to count it against Larson or Harvick because they don't qualify well, but track position is never bad, especially for a guy who's plus 140 for a top 10. I am showing some value in Keselowski to win at plus 3,500, but I prefer him top 10 at plus 140. So the NASCAR Cup Series bets this weekend, Larson 5-1, Harvick 11-1 to win, and also minus 160 top 10, and Keselowski top 10 at plus 140. On the Xfinity Series side of things, I am seeing value on some somewhat longer shots here. I show value on Brandon Jones and Riley Herbst to win. I'm skeptical they can top all these guys because Josh Berry, really good at Dover. Justin Allgaier, always great on concrete. So I'm not sure they can beat him. So the outrights, Herbst is 20-1, Jones also 20-1. I'm not quite there, but there are some top 5 bets I like if you can get access to them, primarily at William Hill shops. One of them is actually on Herbst, top 5. Other one is on Derek Krause. Let's start here with Herbst. I have him 31% to finish inside the top 5. He is plus 275 for a top 5, which is 26.7% implied odds. And it's a decent enough gap. Herbst finished 9th in Dover last year, but his form this year is really good. He had a top 5 run in Phoenix. It's not similar to Dover, but it is a driver-centric track-ish. We also saw Herbst have a 5th place average running position in Richmond, which is the same thing. Not super similar, but it is driver-centric. which is a good thing for a place like Dover. The track record for Herbst at Dover is good. He had 3 top 10s and 5 trips. One of those was a 6th place run. Seems like he is trending up a bit this year. Maybe Cole Custer being in that stable has helped Herbst a bit, but I think the plus 275 top 5 is a good number for Herbst, so I will be willing to take that and bet him to finish inside the top 5, despite being less willing to bite on having value for the outright. Derek Krause running just his 4th Xfinity Series race. He had top 10s in both Richmond and Martinsville. But if you go back to the Truck Series last year with Krause, he had a 5th place average running position at Bristol. That's a good thing. He had a 10th place mark in Nashville. So he has run concrete and he's run it decently well. Colleague Racing last year at Dover, good runs from both AJ Allmendinger and Daniel Hemrick at Dover. Justin Haley in the Cup Series ran well for them. That's not my model, but doesn't hurt to see that Colleague ran well here, both in Cup and Xfinity. Krause is 6-1 for a top 5. Implied odds there are 14%. I have him at 17%. I think he's a good enough talent. Didn't tear it up with McAnally Hilgeman last year in the Truck Series, but in a good car with Colleague right now. Top 5 isn't too bad when there are no Cup Series drivers in this race. So I'm okay betting on Krause at 6-1 for a top 10 and pairing him with Herbst at plus 275. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Be back with you once again tomorrow. We're going to talk some baseball there, and we'll talk some EPL as well to get a read on that. Big thank you once again to Tom Vecchio. Check him out on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Find his work over at numberFire.com. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can also make sure you're subscribed to the podcast by searching for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And also check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there. Hit the thumbs up button. And also give us a 5-star rating on Apple if you like what you're on the podcast side of things. Good luck to all of you with your bets for Thursday night. Enjoy the draft, enjoy the playoffs, and we'll talk to you once again tomorrow to close out this week. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.